Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to today's edition of Black Health Trust. We are so happy you chose to spend this time with us. We are looking forward to having a very important conversation about cardiac metabolism. And without further ado, I'll turn it over to our founder, Dr. Randall Maxey.
Good morning, Dr. Barbara Davis-Stevens, and my personal psychiatrist, Dr. Walks, and hello, Dr. Lawson, if you're on. And Dr. Walks, I didn't get to go to church this morning, so I hope you represented me well.
Um, I I ushered at two services today, Dr. Maxey, one for you and one for me. So we're
Okay,
good.
very, very good. I wanted to speak a bit, even though I didn't go to church this morning. It occurred to me that I believe in miracles. And, miracles are experienced by all of us every day. Now, my concern is, what is a miracle? Well, I just asked a question to my Siri, and it says that the body is made up of approximately 206 bones in the adult skeleton. There are over 600 muscles enabling movement and stability. There are about 78 organs, with 5 of which are considered vital, such as the brain, the heart, the lungs, the liver, and the kidneys. And there are around 37.2 trillion cells, forming the building blocks of all tissues and systems. And all these work together in complex systems to maintain life. So every morning that you wake up and those things work together, that's a miracle. Or maybe 40 million miracles at once, that they're all working together. Well, we want to talk about some things about life that are all working together or not. And we want to talk about cardiometabolic syndrome. Simon, can you show our slides, please? And I'm going to ask Dr. Neighbor-Stevens and Dr. Walks to moderate and pose any questions they need from me. So, cardiometabolic disease, new frontiers in understanding and treatment. Let's go to the next slide, please. So, cardiometabolic disease includes heart disease, type 2 diabetes, hypertension, also known as high blood pressure, kidney disease, obesity, and high cholesterol. These conditions are very interrelated and driven by shared risk factors. Next slide. So, 1 in 3 adults in the United States have metabolic syndrome. It's a leading global cause of death. So if we go back to that point number 1, I think there are about above 300 million people in the United States, maybe closer to 4. But that means there are at least 150 million people that have metabolic syndrome. So that's a big number. It's disproportionately in minorities and low-income groups. Next slide. So what's new in understanding the root causes of these issues? Inflammation and insulin resistance are key drivers of this problem. Adipose tissue, which is fat tissue, acts as an endocrine organ. So it's not just fat, it's actually an organ, and it acts in a way. And there are 2 kinds of fats. There's yellow fat and brown fat. The gut microbiome influences metabolism, and that's important in the field of psychiatry because we know that much of the brain and its function in terms of emotions and other problems happen because of what happens in the gut. And we know that genetics and epigenetics also play a role. Next slide. So let's talk about a few terms. Insulin resistance. I'm not trying to take you to medical school, but I do want to increase your understanding. The body poorly responds to insulin if you have insulin resistance. Insulin makes the glucose that we need for energy go into the muscle, into the cells. Without it, you have a buildup of glucose in the body, and that constitutes diabetes. Atherosclerosis that somebody mentioned earlier this morning uh, can lead to plaque formation in the arteries. Now, plaque is a buildup of fat areas, and it builds up where there's inflammation on the or some damage in the blood vessels that we talked about. Specifically, it's in the endothelium, which is the inside lining of the blood vessels. Now, the reason that's so important that the lining of these blood vessels, if you were to put them all end to end, side by side, and the average person would cover up more than 6 tennis courts. So that's a big amount of thing to get sick. So endothelial dysfunction, this is a lining of the blood vessels of the body, and this controls the expansion and contraction that we talked about a week ago that helps control your blood pressure, blood flow, and where it goes. And inflammation, if you think of a sore, that happens with overactive immune response inside the body. And that is the basis of a lot of the diseases that we have in the body. Next slide. But lifestyle, and we've talked about this for the past several months, is the foundation of prevention. Nutrition, such as whole plant-based foods, that's very important. Movement, stay active, regular exercise. Now, regular exercise is more than just walking or running, but it exists for the cardiovascular aspects, or what we call cardio, but there's also resistance, such as lifting weights or using those rubber bands for expansion that you pull out. So they're both. And some people suggest that you should do 5 days of cardio and 2 days of resistance. That's very important. But it also means you need more sleep and less stress. And this is essential for hormonal balance. And I'm going to ask Dr. Walks about that a little bit later. Next slide. So there's some new medications that have gotten a lot of publicity lately. There's a so-called GLP-1 receptor agonist. Agonist means it stimulates something. And everybody's heard the name Ozempic. That is a sine qua non of that type of drug. Another one is SGLT2 inhibitors. And the poster child of that is called Farxiga. There are other ones. Then there's the dual agonists, such as Mounjaro. And then there's the drugs that are the PCSK9 inhibitors, that when people cannot reach their goal with statins, we can go to that, which is an injectable drug. But let's go into more detail. Next slide. So what do these GLP-1 receptor agonists do? Just so you know, we know that they do reduce weight, and they reduce weight in part by stopping the gut from excreting, they stop it from emptying, and that allows you to feel full or have satiety. It also protects the heart. It helps regulate blood sugar by allowing you to urinate out more sugar. It promotes insulin release, and suppresses glucagon secretion, which is very important, and it slows gastric emptying. So in the first point, by reducing the emptying of the stomach, which is the gastrum, that makes you feel full. But it also reduces the heart disease, your liability to have heart failure and stroke as well. But the big thing is if you're diabetic, it helps you urinate or pee out sugar. So keep that low. So what's the caution with that? It could be dangerous if you're using insulin or anything else to lower your insulin. You might need to lower the dose of what you're taking. And you also, because it makes you urinate more, want to make sure you stay well hydrated and drink enough water. And I'd be concerned if you're also taking a concurrent water pill with this, that you may need to stop it or at least lower the dose or cut it in half. Thank you very much. Next slide. The other type is the SGLT2 inhibitor. And the poster child of that is Farxiga. It protects the kidney and the heart. It blocks the reabsorption of glucose in the kidney. So because you don't reabsorb it, it also gets urinated out. It increases the glucose excretion in the urine, which is very important. It also reduces the risk of heart failure. It can be used also in combination with the first class of GLP-1 as well as this drug. The caution in this one, you have to stay well hydrated. You also have to make sure that you're watching any other medications for diabetes, such as insulin, because you don't want to get caught up with that. And you don't want, with any of the two of these drugs, to have any history in your family of having thyroid disease, pancreatic disease. And so you talk with your provider very much about that. And also it can cause a very serious type of infection in the perineum of bacteria or fungus. So you want to make sure to keep yourself well cleaned and notify your physician if you have any pain or disturbance in the area of the perineum between the scrotum and the rectum, or the vagina and the rectum. Next slide. So there's also a kind of drug that's called a dual agonist, and people know that as Mounjaro, and that works much the same as the two drugs before. And then there's a PCSK9 inhibitors, and this will lower your cholesterol if your statins, which we recommend, people, especially people with diabetes, are all on, even though a lot of people don't like to take them. They're very important to lower that LDL and LDL-C, which needs to be below 100 to make less plaque in your body. And I advise this person on our call to make sure that they get not only a calcium score, but a computer-assisted, AI-assisted calcium score they call CLEAR, that your cardiologist can do. And that's very important, identifying, do you have plaque, how much plaque you have, and how much of the plaque is dangerous versus not dangerous. So that is a very important predictor of cardiovascular disease, heart failure, and heart attack. You don't want to find out the wrong way. Next slide. So what's the role of weight loss? So a 5 to 10% weight loss improves blood sugar, blood pressure, and cholesterol. So it's better to have combination meds. In other words, you can put more than one medication in a pill, and that makes it more convenient and people can be more compliant with that. But also, if you combine these medications with lifestyle for best results, you can't just take a pill and expect that you can't change what you eat and you exercise. But it requires, in all the directions for these medications, to combine them with lifestyle change to make this better. No smoking, exercise, and watch what you eat. Next slide. So it's very important to eat fiber-rich foods, healthy fats, and low sugar and low processed foods. That's very important. We hit that thing every month for the past several months. It's very important. And intermittent fasting is also very important. And I've been doing that myself with good results. Next slide. So exercise is not just cardio, resistance training boosts your insulin sensitivity so your insulin works better for you. Walk after meals to control your glucose and aim at 150 minutes per week with 2 strength days. So that'll be 5 days of cardio and 2 days you're doing resistance training. I mean, lift small weights, go to the gym or whatever you do. Next slide. So heart and kidney disease are also linked. Some drugs protect from both. So monitor your glomerular functions called EGFR. Monitor the protein in your urine, that's the urinary ACR. And if it's the urinary ACR is less than 30, you're good. If it's more than 30, I recommend that you look at those aforementioned drugs, the SGLT2 T2 drug and the GLP-1 drug. And also make sure your blood pressure stays under 120/80. Next slide. So we know that the social determinants of health are important, and there are challenges with food deserts where you don't get the same quality of food in the hood that you do in some of the other places, like where Dr. Walks and Dr. Neighbor Stephen live. But I live in the hood, so I have food deserts here. We know that unsafe neighborhoods are something that cause stress, and we know that solutions can exist with community programs and culturally tailored care. I used to tell Black people don't eat soul food, Mexicans not to eat Mexican food, but there's a way to have healthy ethnic foods with less processors and not a lot of salt. Next slide. So health equity and policy is important. And we know that right now that's a challenge in our country. So there's a big risk for anti-DEI policies. We know that they're needed. We know that we need Medicare expansion. I think that's on the chopping block right now. We know that clinical trials need to be inclusive, and we know that people need to have access to lifestyle events that can help them change some of their ways. Next slide. So technology and monitoring. We know that there are continuous glucose monitoring that happen. They just came out with a freestyle monitor, a freestyle 3+ monitor now that it just reads on your phone. And if you qualify for that, you should get one that helps you keep up with continuous monitoring of your glucose. There are things you can wear for your blood pressure, O2 sensors, etc. And there are artificial intelligence decision aids that help. So I like all those little things that go on my iPad and iPhone to help me keep up with my metabolic events. We know this benefits your personalized care and it's subject you to have more empowerment of the patient yourself. Next slide. So I do believe that there should be a team-based approach. Everybody should have a primary care physician, as Dr. Used to always say on our program, Dr. Jordan. They should have a dietitian, a pharmacist, and a mental health professional is very important in your life. And we also believe in telehealth and care teams, but we know there's some issues with telehealth, and Dr. Neighbor Stevens might speak on that, what they're doing with stopping telehealth and having that convenience to physicians and patients. Next slide. So to conclude, we know that cardiometabolic disease is preventable and treatable. Inflammation and insulin resistance are central. New drugs help multiple organs. Lifestyle is crucial, and equity matters. I think that's the last slide. So let's discuss how we can apply this. And I'm open to questions from my co-moderators, whether this should be in clinics, in homes, or community centers. Dr. Neighbor Stevens, thank you very much.
Well, thank you, Dr. Maxey. You have put together a significant packet of information, and I think it's critical that we unpack it. And you gave a list of 3 options as to where we would start employing this information. My vote, and it's almost always this, my vote is to start at home. And one of the things that can help a lot is, and I have been challenged about saying this, but I think it's very important that we try to control as much as we can what we put in our mouths, which is a way of saying we need to do our own cooking. Because when you are eating out, you don't control what's going in your mouth. You have no idea what went on in that kitchen back there. You don't know what they bought. You don't know what they added. So I'm not against going out. And restaurant industry, don't come after me. I like going out. As a matter of fact, I went out for lunch today myself. But when we can, we need to try to eat at home where we can control some of those factors that you were just talking about. We can make sure that it's low fat. We can make sure that it's, well, you didn't talk about low salt, but we can make sure that it's low salt. We can make sure that there's not a lot of sugar added. And the less processed, the more raw ingredients we use, generally speaking, the healthier the meal.
Thank you. Dr. Walks?
So Dr. Maxey, I'm going to start. First of all, thank you, Dr. Maxey. It is important that we continue to reinforce and encourage. And Dr. Steiner put a comment in the put a question actually in the chat. Should salt be restricted with normal kidney function? And I love this question. Thank you, Dr. Steiner. And I love it because there is a culture around healthcare that we want to wait to see if we should do the right thing. And typically the wait to see is we wait to see if something is broken and then we try to fix it. Well, your blood pressure is too high, so let's start exercising, let's change our diet. And I think that there should be an amount of salt that we add so that we can maintain normal kidney function. We should check to make sure we have normal kidney function. Don't correct me if I'm wrong, Dr. Maxey, but by the time your kidneys start acting up on you, you're already late, right?
That's true. Very true.
And
Nice.
and I think that's true with you mentioned at the beginning of your excellent talk, you mentioned we had certain vital organs. I think finding out the state of our vital organs and trying to preserve the state of our vital organs may be a different approach other than waiting until something is not working correctly or is causing us some problems. So that's what I have.
Very good, very good, very good point. And any other comments besides Dr. Steiner in the chat?
Well, I think Dr. Lawson could talk to us quite a bit about. Dr. Lawson put a comment about regular exercise also reducing the risk of depression and anxiety. And thank you, Dr. Lawson, for letting Dr. Maxey know that food deserts are also found in relatively high income communities. So,
They have them in Maryland, Doctor?
not just in Maryland, also in Texas, in Florida,
Get
in
him.
California.
Get him.
Exactly. What's impressive to me is that when you look around and you look at neighborhoods in where there's a heavy concentration of Ussens, you immediately find 7-Eleven. I hope 7-Eleven pushes on around and related stores, but you do not find grocery stores.
Mm-hmm.
Drive massive distances if they want to get grocery stores. And, the historical bit about redlining and so forth. But what happens is when African American communities develop, somehow grocery stores get left out. You get mom and pop stores that are replaced by 7-Elevens, but not grocery stores. And attempts to remove this or change this is a formidable task. And many times I've talked to folks who had 7-Eleven and said, look, let's get fruits and vegetables. And they said, no, people won't eat them. We'll go broke. So part of it also is a thought pattern, is a belief that somehow the mom and pop model or the modern equivalent to the mom and pop model is leading to foods that's more like what we eat. And somehow these grocery stores are somehow looked up as too white, too alien, not really capturing what our communities need. When in fact, what we often think of when we think about communities, but we seem to forgot that our ancestors lived on fruits, vegetables, nuts, so forth, and so on and so on. But were persuaded to eat otherwise when they came to this country and were in slavery.
So let me ask you a direct question, Dr. Lawson. And I don't want to put you in a bad position, but do you think this is happenstance or could it be purposeful?
I think it's a little bit of both. And unfortunately, I think it's a little bit of both that's reinforced by the way in which we structure our own society. And that is that we've somehow made it good that we have what we call comfort food. Comfort means that when you go to the grave, you're feeling good. And all too often, and all too often, it's not just Black folks either. We all know the story how LBJ, doctor, told us, you give up them ribs, we can give you a couple more months. He said, I'll take the ribs. All too often. We go out there, get those pig feet and those chitlins and when we was in the country, we used to have what we call salt fish. Salt fish was fish that was so salted that your blood pressure would go up when you look at it. And sure, we need to preserve the fish with salt, but when we got refrigeration and stuff, folks kept on eating salt fish. And we'd have to wash off the salt just so he could make it palatable. So
let me first of all, Dr. Lawson, yeah, that's exactly right. I think one of the nuances of the grocery store supermarket concern is also that and Dr. Maxey knows everything about me, but he might not know that I have a 10-year pin from the AFL-CIO Food and Commercial Workers Union. I worked in for about for 10 years and became a journeyman grocery clerk. And working in different neighborhoods, different cities, the food is different, even in the same supermarket. A Safeway in one zip code will not carry the same food as a Safeway in another zip code, or a Giant, or whatever the name of the supermarket is. And not only will they carry different items, they'll carry different quality of items. And so we really have to be, as Dr. Neighbor Stevens said, we have to be careful shoppers. We have to make sure that we are buying what's good for us. And it's going to be harder given a lot of I hate to even get into this, but a lot of the changes currently with the food inspections and a lot of people that were responsible for making sure that our food was okay are not working anymore or not going to be working anymore. And so it really is incumbent upon us to understand about all of this variation, all of this diversity in our resources that are available, and be careful, smart shoppers, and really make sure that we know what we're buying, what we're cooking, and we got to back away from the pig feet and the port rinds and all the other stuff that you will find in some of those stores in our neighborhood.
Yes, indeed. I want to go back to what Dr. Steiner was talking about. That is very important to look at your food labels, but there's almost no reason to use a salt shaker. And maybe we need to start a campaign about salt shakers. If you read those labels, there's a fair amount of sodium in most of these foods, especially when you get to snacks and things at 7-Eleven, which is owned by the Southland Company. So I don't think the average person needs to use a salt shaker at all. And we train our kids to have salt take, to like salt.
Yeah.
I've seen a mother with beef nut baby food, put a little bit of salt in it and taste it till it tastes good to her and give it to her baby. You see, teaching that baby it's not good unless it tastes salty.
Mm.
So you don't really need to have outside salt in the food to make it good. Now, of course, if it's summertime and you're doing a lot of physical activity, you may need a little bit of salt, but normally that's not something you need. Dr. Lisa Dawes spoke last week that they cut down on water pills and diuretics in the summertime because people are already losing a lot of fluids through their sweating and breathing and whatnot, being outside. So we do have to have individual cases, but as a normal rule, you don't need to use a salt shaker. And also, there's a genetic component that most of our people, Ussens, I didn't know there was a group called Ussens, but Ussens, as Dr. Lawson said, uh, have a salt sensitivity that when some of our ancestors came across the Middle Passage, those who survived had the salt sensitive gene. And that makes us more reactive to salt in your blood. It makes your reactivity of your capillaries and blood vessels more, so you don't need as much salt. So that is very important to remember. You probably are salt sensitive. Dr. Neighbor Stevens, I see you.
I just wanted to make a add on to the whole salt thing. It may sound like many things that we like and enjoy, and somebody talks about stopping it. There's a normal, I suspect, reaction of, I don't want to do that, or that's too hard, or whatever, or I don't need to do that. Excuses made not to do it. But in point of fact, as far as this salt in particular is concerned, I can tell you through personal experience, I did a cold turkey stop salt during my first pregnancy years ago. And at first it was hard for sure, because I'm a Southerner and I like my seasoning. I like my salt. And I'm trying to be careful about distinguishing between the two. But after a while, I really didn't miss it. Your palate adjusts. And there are other seasonings that have less or no harmful effects that you can use that will enhance the flavor of foods. And then I got to the point where I find food in a lot of places to be too salty. In certain restaurants, I just can't enjoy the meal. It's too salty to me. And I realized I could taste the salt on the nuts in butter pecan ice cream. So you'll be shocked at how desensitized we are because of our lifelong history of using salt. It may sound like it's hard to do, but it's really not.
Hmm. I gave a grand round once at your school, Dr. Neighbor Stevens in Boston.
Hmm.
What's the main school there?
Harvard.
Yeah. I gave grand rounds up there with your friend,
Dr. Penn,
no, the anesthesiologist.
Dr. Coombs.
Yes. And at this grand round, I started off by saying certain people are hardwired to a salty taste, something that's also crisp. salt, taste, and crisp. So that means fried fish. And that is so good, but so dangerous. The fish part isn't so bad, but making sure it's salty and crispy is part of the whole thing that people don't gravitate so much to baked and roasted fish as they do to being hardwired for things that are crispy and salty. That's why Lay's potato chips say you can't eat but just one.
You're
So,
right.
but that's because of our, I think, training and inculcation that happens in early life, something crisp and salty. Is there any psychological reason for that, Dr. Walsh and Dr. Lawson?
Well, I used to do animal research in terms of taste, and I just want to note that there is a specific receptor for salt as one of the basic core taste elements. And the reason for it is that species, when we moved to dry land, became very important to be able to maintain electrolyte balance. And that's why the ability to taste salt, I think, played a key role. But also, as Dr. Williams repeatedly has noted, the mortality rate on slave ships was close to 50%. And the reason is that people died of hyponatremia. So for a long time, it was essential. We couldn't, they just didn't get enough sodium. So they died. When we got back to dry land, we also had to need to preserve food. Didn't have refrigerators. So what you had to do was salt it down to preserve food. So there's a lot of historical genetic factors that's leading to this salt preference and this salt desire. But the other part of it is that with experience and with training and with dietary change, you don't need it.
Well, thank you. Is Dr. Steiner unmuted? I'd like him to comment on the salt.
Okay, Dr. Maxey, that was great to talk on the salt. It cleared up a lot of questions that me and other colleagues had. The discussion was if your EGFR is normal and everything else is normal, why do you have to restrict salt? But I think the answer seems to clearly be if you're interested in longevity and having everything work as long as it can, you don't want to start pushing the limits and having things start to fail. And I get it. I'm with you on it. So thank you today for clarifying that. And thank you for your introduction was so graceful. It really got to us all here today, all of us listening. So thank you for that tremendous introduction. So graceful. Appreciate it.
Well, thank you, Dr. Steiner. One day I'm going to get to that part of the country and see how beautiful it is up there.
Well, I may come out to you just yet. My daughter's out your way. So if I come out, you're the first person I call. I promise we'll go out. Yeah.
Okay, very good. We won't eat salt.
That's yeah. Maybe we'll cheat. Please quiet them down, Sue.
Okay.
Thank you.
Anybody else in the chat? Any questions, any thoughts? That's neighbor Stevens, Dr. Walsh?
I don't see anything recent, but from the very beginning of your talk, when you were talking about Ozempic, there's a question because of the the slowing of the gastric emptying. Do you see an increased incidence or flare up in esophagitis and reflux?
No, not in esophagitis or reflux, but we do see that some people do get obstructed lower down, and people who had problems with obstruction before. And one of the main causes of obstruction is to have previous intestinal surgery. That's the biggest cause of obstruction, and sometimes it can be exacerbated even further down with the Ozempic type drugs. And also the caution is if people have any type of thyroid problem, particularly MEN, multiple endocrine adenopathy, previous pancreatitis, those drugs can be contraindicated, but you need to discuss that with your physician. So if you had previous gastric problems, make sure you discuss it with your doctor before you just take it. Now, everybody's taking it for weight, but all these drugs have indications that they decrease cardiac disease and kidney disease as well. They don't necessarily have an indication for obesity. At least the drug companies are trying to say that so they don't have to pay for it. They want the cash. But most people with diabetes, type 2 diabetes, do um, get it paid for. The other thing I want to say is that when you're taking some of these drugs, you do have to be careful about having diabetic ketoacidosis because there's a very tight relationship between your blood glucose, glucagon, the burning of fat to make ketones. And so again, staying well hydrated, monitor your blood sugar, keep your activity up, and your insulin sensitivity up is very important. Well, we're close to the top of the hour, Dr. Stevens, and you're in Florida. It's 1:47 now. Anything else that we want to talk about as we give our, I keep cautioning us not to say final, but conclusive remarks, Dr. Walks.
We've got two people with hands up.
Okay, let's recognize them.
That would be Dr. Lawson and I don't know who the other person is.
Gibson.
Dr. Gibson.
Okay. Let's do Dr. Gibson first since he hasn't talked and he was kind enough to speak to me this morning. Dr. Gibson?
Thank you. Thank you very much. Just wanted to circle back to Dr. Steiner's comments. He mentioned EGFR. That's the glomerular filtration rate. Our kidneys have a function to filter the blood in our bodies. And it's important that everyone understands how critical those functions, and I'm sure you, Dr. Maxey, out of all of us on the call today, have a very intense appreciation for kidney function. Now, the sodium really, even with good EGFR, and that there's some controversy over, which numbers are better for Black folks in particular. I think those are on a case-by-case basis as far as the impact of sodium on our health. So goes the sodium, so goes the water, so goes the water. That can be like water in a garden hose. If there's too much pressure, and that sodium can lead to too much pressure, that can lead to cardiac overload and other problems that lead to serious life-threatening complications. That's why I say, just as Hippocrates said back in the day, let that food be the medicine and let that medicine be that food. Thank you.
Very good. I appreciate that. So as a pharmacist, so may I ask you a question, Dr. Gibson?
Yes, sir.
What are some of the cautions that you give patients who are being prescribed SGLT1s and SGLT2s?
Well, there's several actually. I think that it's important to be mindful of the GI issues. That is not nothing. That's a serious issue. Also, the other critical kidney function, those sorts of things, they merit watching. So laboratory vigilance in terms of the values that those patients have over time, that's to be taken very, very seriously. And they need to be coordinated with a capable practitioner, whomever, because some folks, I'm under the impression, prescribe those medications and they're not vigilant with them. They merit serious vigilance, the GLP-1s in particular.
Very good. So with those drugs, for example, with the Ozempic, they recommend that you double the dose every month going forward up to a point. But I found that some people can't tolerate doubling of the dose. So you can increase it by 1/4, increase it by 1/2 as you go forward. But make sure you always do this in combination, as Dr. Gibson says, with your provider on that. Dr. Lawson?
Yeah, again, as you've noted many times, I'll bring it up again. Eating behavior is determined not just by gastrointestinal problem issues, but there's a part of the brain called the hypothalamus, linking with the limbic system, that really determines eating behavior. And what we find interestingly is that some people are contrary. Is it when you see when gastric surgery first came out, many people were, before they could have the surgery, were taught this is how you're supposed to eat. With agents such as Ozempic and others, but not folks aren't told that. And so they jump in, and literally there have been cases, actually some famous football player came on TV, talked about how he overcame the medication. That is that he continued to eat like crazy, even though he was on it. And guess what? All the throwing up GI, going to the restroom, all that stuff, a lot of the so-called side effects of these agents related to the fact of something that the gastric surgery people noted a long time ago. And that is that you need to either remind people or encourage them to eat in a way that emphasis on small portions throughout the day, rather than trying to eat a complete meal in a half an hour. And that's also the downside of fasting techniques, because folks will fast for like 6 hours and then come back and try to eat 3 or 4 meals in a half an hour. And because of our brains, we can sort of override what our stomach and our GI system is saying you're out of your mind.
So can you apply your wisdom to the training table we used to have in football in college, where all the athletes would give you big steaks and stuff?
Absolutely. And the result was that and I used to wrestle with Dr. Walksnow, and in wrestling, that whole idea, you try to get your weight down to what it is. And there are many times when I see folks go on the mat and throw up because they decide to make weight and then make up the meal in one setting. The training table idea is a nice idea for a very brief anaerobic exercise, but it does not work practically in terms of providing enough energy so that you can be effective in terms of doing your activities.
All right. I spoke to one of our attendees early in the broadcast. They were telling me that they had done something with their cholesterol. I wonder if she wants to speak a moment. I won't call her out by name, but if she wants to speak, I'd like her to say something.
Yes, I will say something. First, let me just thank you guys so much. I've been attending this for over 5 years now. And you have given me lots of opinions, not advice, but opinions that I paid no attention to all the way until I ended up with atherosclerosis. So now I'm on statins. I'm sorry that I didn't pay attention earlier, but I'm glad that nothing happened to me. I didn't have a tragic accident or heart incident. So now I'm on statins and I'm exercising 5 days a week, and at least 5 days a week, if not more. And I just want to thank you.
And you're going to see your cardiologist as soon as you get home, right?
Yes, as soon as I'm a snowbird. So I saw my cardiologist in California because I have the right kind of Medicare. So I was able to see my cardiologist in California, but it was too close to the time for me to leave. So they had me to see my cardiologist back in Chicago. And we're working with the statins right now, but then I'm going to have my appointment in June with my cardiologist.
Okay, and we suggest that you make sure you get your calcium score or either a clear test so they can measure your total body calcification and look at your heart risk, right?
Yes, I have all of that written down in my notes, and I will give that information to my cardiologist. Actually, I'm going to go on the patient portal and talk about it before I even go to see him.
All right, well, thank you so much. I think it's time we can have our final comments, starting with Dr. Lawson, then Dr. Walks and Neighbor Stevens. Dr. Lawson?
Yeah, I just wanted to note that I think this is a very important discussion because it brings about the point that, as my colleague Dr. Alvis Stewart made, is from the neck up. That's at least as important as what happens below the neck. That determines what happens in terms of our long-term health. So everything that we've discussed, all it begins not by some external variable, but by the decisions that we make and institutionalize in our society settings.
Thank you, Dr. Lawson. Dr. Walks. Dr. Walks, are you there?
I think we might have lost him. They were having a
Hey, brother.
storm. They were having a storm. We lost him.
Okay, well, we wish him luck, that he's safe and doesn't get too wet there. That's Barbara Neighbor Stevens.
Well, thank you, Dr. Maxey. It is hard to believe it's been over 5 years. A lot of things have happened. A lot of things I have probably yet will happen. But what we can do is what we can do. What I mean by that is we don't know the future, but we know what we can do now. And it's our responsibility to do that. So think about what we've been talking about not just today, but the last few weeks. And make a plan for yourself. Get yourself a whiteboard. You can go to Dollar Tree, Dollar General, any of those before they close. I'm a little upset because all my favorite stores are closing, but like Big Lots. But get your chalkboard or something and make a plan. You can make a plan how you want to do your meals. You can make a plan how you want to do your exercising. Get some organization to the thoughts and follow your plan.
Thank you very much. For my concluding comment, I want to say that protect your heart, protect your kidneys, protect your body by making sure that you live a more healthy, active life. Control what you put in your body. Cook at home, as Dr. Neighbor says. Buy food if you have to go outside of your neighborhood to get it, bring it home and fix it. And stay away from 7-Eleven and some of the places that have bad processed food for us. Have a great Sunday, Simon. Thank you very much for helping. Have a great day. All my co-moderators, enjoy your Sunday.
Bye.
Bye.